Hey everyone, welcome to another happy hour. I'm Jeff, also known as the Revit Kid. I want to thank you guys for hanging out. Sorry it's a few minutes late. I don't know if you guys knew, but YouTube actually went down 5 minutes before we started, which is crazy. So we're going to jump right into it. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to my channel. It's the best way for you to get notifications for the next happy hour and when it's going to be. We're going to jump right into it because you guys are hanging out. Thanks for joining. Looks like we got quite a few people from all over the place. But I have a special guest with me, so I'm going to introduce the one and only Marcello. Marcello, welcome back. Say hello.
Hello, thank you.
Say hello to the YouTube world.
Hello.
So Marcello, I'm going to assume not everyone has seen the last episode, so maybe if you want to do a quick introduction on yourself, short bio before you jump into some content.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Marcello Sgambelluri. I've known Jeff now for, oh gosh, 6 years or so.
At least,
Yeah,
yeah.
at least. Yeah, at least. Actually, I'm a licensed structural engineer. I'm the director of advanced technology at my firm, John Martin Associates, a structural engineering firm. So that's part of what I do. Another thing I do is try to push all the software in AEC to its limits. I speak all over the world, although we're kind of in lockdown, so I'm doing a lot of virtual, conferences right now, similar to this. I just like to teach everyone, try to make AEC a better place. How's
Awesome.
that?
That was
Yeah.
perfect. That was perfect. So Marcello came on a couple weeks ago. There was three of us: Paul, Albin, myself, and Marcello, and we kind of just did a random Q&A, and it was pretty cool. Everyone had a bunch of great questions. But then Marcello reached out recently and said he was really excited to talk about something he's been working on, which I'll let him introduce. But it's something I know, Marcello, I believe you've been messing around with for a little while, because I think, if memory serves me right, it was quite a few months ago you posted a couple things about Rhino and Revit and this connection, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe about July of last year is when I started
Yeah.
to really get into it.
Yeah, so you've been marching around, which is great. I'm gonna say to you and to everyone else, I think I'm gonna enjoy this just as much as those here on the channel, because I will admit that I don't know very much about Rhino and Grasshopper. I obviously
Okay.
know plenty about Dynamo, and I know Grasshopper is very similar as far as visual programming, but I do having teaching at a university as well as obviously speaking with many students, especially Rhino seems to be a pretty big program in that realm, and then obviously on the design side of things, it's pretty popular. So I'm excited to hear where you see this connection being valuable and benefiting the AEC community as a whole. So I'm excited
Uh,
as well. I'm sure everyone else is too.
yeah. Okay. So I can take it away.
Yeah, let's do it. So Marcelo's going to run through some content, and I'm gonna check the chat, and if there's any questions, I'll interrupt. We want to try and keep this a little formal. I don't want it to just be presenting to you guys. It is live, so feel free to ask questions, and then we'll just carry the conversation as we go along. So with that, go ahead, man, kick it away. Of
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
course.
All right, everyone. There's this new technology out there called Rhino Inside Revit, and I'm trying to take a different tact on it, which is at first glance, it's basically the entire Rhinoceros program inside of Revit is what it is. But what happens is what immediately comes to mind to most people is the idea of interoperability. The be able to transfer elements from Rhinoceros to Revit and then Revit to Rhinoceros. But I'm here to actually try to show you that there's way more to it than just that. Back when I was starting to teach Dynamo for the first time, I think Jeff, you might have been in a few of my classes back 2014 or so.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, when Dynamo came out, um, a lot of people I talked to said they didn't want to get involved with it because it only had to do with very conceptual design, very complicated systems. Like you hear the cliche of the twisting tower, so it has nothing to do with them. My reaction was like, "Whoa, hang on a second. It
Hmm.
has everything to do with you. There's a big misconception around this. So I've kind of cycled back around, and we're at another kind of misconception that this whole new technology is only focused on interoperability, when in fact that's just a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. So what I'm trying to do is come up with methods to kind of instruct the AEC industry on about this whole concept, and it being much more to it. So let me share my screen. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the actual concept of Rhino inside Revit, but let me just share my screen if I could.
Go for it.
Let's see how it is. You're so I'll explain as I get things rolling here, because we kind of you kind of everyone kind of got caught off guard because things went down, so I had to shut
Yeah.
everything down.
Yeah, I know. I actually was getting ready to stream live on Facebook and then record it and put it on YouTube. So I actually had to recopy all the stream data, in the last 5 minutes, and then get you back on the line. So this is, it's live, right?
Okay,
It's the fun.
it's live. All right, yeah, we are live. So I guess while we wait, I'll kind of do some hand waving and explain.
Go for it.
Basically, in concept, what it is. So it's basically McNeil that makes the rhinoceros, and I tend to call it rhinoceros now, not rhino, because rhino and Revit are so close. I tend to switch them around. So rhinoceros, which is a 3D modeling program,
Hmm.
also has a Grasshopper, which is a visual programming language for rhinoceros. They decided to kind of strip it down to its core and rebuild it, and then place it inside of Revit as an add-in. So now the entire rhinoceros program and Grasshopper is an add-in to Revit. That's what's kind of revolutionary about this concept, and that's all I'll kind of say about it.
Hmm.
Um, so you can think of add-ins to Revit like um, content management systems like Unify,
Hmm.
or error tracking like BIMTrack, right? This would just be another one of those. It
Hmm.
would be Rhinoceros, but it happens to be inside Revit. So kind of think about in that regard, and then just how powerful this add-in is. But it gives you all the functionality of Rhinoceros and Grasshopper,
Hmm.
and so it's a little mind-boggling actually everything that it contains. So I'm yeah. So just kind of think about it in that way. So what I thought I'd do is because a lot of the ideas around this new technology is focused on interoperability. Is I thought perhaps a good way to kind of show the industry how to do this and kind of learn it is to piggyback on what of a lot of the industry already knows now, which is Dynamo. And so I'm still kind of firing up, but let me share my screen and see how I do this. Okay, let's see. So,
Looks like we
and if
do
you're
have. I
some
asked on
questions,
the chat, and it looks like we do have a few Rhino users here, which is cool. I would hope there
awesome.
would have been obviously some Revit users. A
Yes,
few people already
yes,
like
this is
already
my.
like your lightsabers. If you guys want to know about the lightsabers, check out the last video that Marcello was on. We talked a little bit about the lightsabers.
Oh yeah, they're popping up again. Huh? That's cool. Yeah, you know what I'll do? Everyone who's on, I'll actually light one of them up for you. Okay, hold on a sec.
There we go.
It's kind of right in here. So okay, this one. There's
Oh,
one. Another. We'll light them all up. There we go.
nice. Oh, they're not even the same color. They're all different
They're
colors.
not even the same color, right? Yeah, there's a. There we go. So yeah, total nerd power in here. Yeah, but I'm okay. There's a purple one back there. If anyone wants to put in the chat what you think that is, whose lightsaber that is, then you'll win an extra shout out. Okay, so all right, let me share my screen
I
because
have a feeling many people will get that right. Just a hunch.
all right. So let's see, screen one. Here we go. Okay, here we go. All right, so can you see my screen now?
Almost. I'm seeing myself. There we go. I got a nice desktop.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let me show you something here. So this right now is a book I'm writing. It's 90% done. It's called the Dynamo Training Manual. So I just thought that a good thing to do was okay. So basically, if anyone's familiar with my format, there's kind of these one-page formats for learning Dynamo. There's kind of a basic, intermediate, advanced section. Basically, one-page summaries, cheat sheets. I know, Jeff, you like cheat sheets too.
Oh yeah.
Just basically, maybe 5 to 6 nodes. I think 13 at the most. Basically, how to do something, how to get and set parameters.
Awesome.
And then there's nodes, and then there's a resulting Revit geometry. Well, I thought, what if, kind of like learning a new language, whether you're a Rhinoceros user, a Grasshopper user, a Revit, a Dynamo user, or kind of anywhere in between, having these kind of compatible documents may be helping. So what I'm doing now is I'm in the process of taking my book, which is about 200 pages, and I'm making equivalent Grasshopper inside a Rhinoceros inside Revit equivalents, which would be all done in Grasshopper. And we'll go over some examples. But what I'm ultimately getting at is we're headed towards this direction, which is taking the equivalent, and let's see here if I can find it. Hang on a second. I had it up earlier. 1 second.
So if you guys haven't seen Marcello's cheat sheet forms, I've used numerous ones. I think the first one I ever used was making beams follow a complex roof or something like that back when I was starting Dynamo. But if you haven't, where can they get those? At the blog or
so it's okay. Good question. Right now, I have basically a media kind of site called simplycomplex.org. There we've got a podcast, a blog, a comic, a YouTube channel, and there we have the Dynamo reference book. You can head on over to simplycomplex.org and check out for updates there. It'll be out very, very soon. Awesome. So that's where you can find information on it, right here.
All right, I linked it in the chat, and then I'll also link it in the description after the live event too. So everyone can check it out.
For some reason, my mouse stopped working on me, but anyway, we'll set it. I don't know if it's all whatever. Okay, so let me show you kind of a prototype of what I'm actually working on now, which is basically kind of a combo, which is the Dynamo reference manual and the Rhino Inside Revit reference manual, where you can go through, other than kind of the beginning, start out stuff, but basically it's a side-by-side read. So nice. So you have on the left side in green, you have the Grasshopper equivalent, and then you have on the right side a Dynamo equivalent. And so awesome. This is kind of a prototype of what I'm working on, but I eventually plan to make all the sheets like equivalent. And if they don't quite match 1-to-1, then they'll be related in some way. I thought I'd do this because if you're kind of like learning a new language and you have two equivalent ones, it's kind of easy to go from one to the other. And if you happen to know both, then it'd just be a good reference. So that's the idea. Awesome. I want to go over, maybe we can just go over two of these. And then what I'm going to do to help promote this idea is I'm going to start a series on my YouTube channel on going over the equivalents of these cool. As well. Yeah. So that'll start in about 3 weeks.
Awesome.
Where we actually will go through one by one these. So these are kind of the early ones with, obviously this is like a Dynamo point and a Grasshopper point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this was kind of the idea. So these are kind of the simple ones, but you get used to kind of familiar. Mm-hmm. This is like on the surface.
How different are you? Because the ones I've seen so far here and then on your blog have been
very similar.
Yeah, the concept as a Dynamo user have been pretty easy to follow. But have you gotten to a point? Have you gotten to a point where there's some where you're scratching your head and it's like the logic of Dynamo isn't applying to the logic in Grasshopper? Or you haven't found it yet?
Yes, okay. That's happening. It's quite honestly a challenge, but there are a few things that, and it makes total sense why they're a challenge to find the equivalences, because in those areas they're not supposed to compare 1-to-1 because they're completely different ways of handling it, right. Which I think is a good thing. So it's like, you want to do this. Okay, this is really the way in Dynamo. This is really the way in Grasshopper inside Revit. So, so there's a whole bunch going on here right now. But the kind of the idea is why would you make an equivalent first of all, right? If Grasshopper inside Revit could do the same thing as Dynamo inside Revit, right?
Right.
Well, okay. There's a lot of reasons why you would use these concepts, and the idea with the Dynamo reference manual, and now I'm thinking of calling it the Grasshopper inside Revit reference manual, just to be a little more specific, is that it teaches you concepts. And so if you want to do this, here's a concept, and then here's a concept, and here's a concept. You're going to be able to piece it all together once you kind of learn these concepts. So this is very concept driven, not necessarily workflow driven.
Right.
So then, like here, for example, there's these have totally two different ways of doing it. So the example on the right, in Dynamo for Revit, what you're doing is you're selecting all of the structural beams inside of a project, and then you're getting all of the surface areas, and then you're summing them up on the right side. And so those selection methods that you use in Grasshopper inside Revit are completely different.
Yeah.
So it's kind of showing you the equivalent, but very different in concept. They use what they call filter concepts. So you filter, it's through a series of filters to get you to kind of where you want to be. But in the end, you end up with the exact same answer in this. So that's kind of, we won't go over this one, but that's just kind of the idea. So there are equivalents, but differences. And then again, I think maybe Jeff, this is probably one that you tackled is being able to place structural beams. There's a Dynamo way to do it, as well as a Grasshopper way to do it. We'll deal with that one in a minute. But then here's what kind of drives it home, I think, is, and then we'll get into like some examples. This one, the one on the right, is you're using the power of Dynamo to take these profiles that are in Dynamo and being able to reorder them so that you can rebuild the surface, which is the kind of the casing of this jet engine, to reorder it so you can rebuild that form inside of Revit. But in this case, you are picking the profiles inside of Dynamo.
Right.
But so what would happen in concept on the left is, instead of actually picking the profiles that are inside of Grasshopper, you're building a lot of this geometry inside of Rhinoceros, and then you're picking the elements inside of Rhinoceros and reordering them based on the Grasshopper equivalent of how to select and so on, and then you're rebuilding that form inside of Revit. So they're not quite one-to-one comparisons. They're more for like what would make sense in a Rhinoceros inside Revit / Grasshopper inside Revit workflow, and then versus a Dynamo for Revit workflow. Yeah. Were we going to say something?
I was just going to say, so in this example, and maybe you'll get into it when you do the demo, but are you physically drawing the geometry that you're choosing in Rhino, or are you using Grasshopper to draw the geometry? You're actually physically drawing it.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, you can kind of choose what you'd want to do. Right. But in this scenario, the geometry, let's say the back casing as well as that kind of connection that would go onto the jet wing. I'm not great at, not that, my aviation anatomy is probably not the best, but anyway, that's all built. But then this other special component, which you're building the profiles inside of Rhinoceros, and then you're selecting those profiles out of Rhinoceros. So bringing into Grasshopper, and then you're taking that and then you're building the form in Revit using Grasshopper inside Revit. That's the idea. So if we look back at here, so what someone could have done in your office is built all of this geometry and the profiles. Now, could they have built the casing in Rhinoceros? Absolutely. But this is just kind of proving the concept of like, you can build certain things and then build other things inside of Revit. Now, for example, let's say you wanted to keep this particular casing as native geometry inside of Revit. So in that case, you would want to build it as a form inside of Revit. Yet you're using guidance of the profiles that were built inside of Rhinoceros. Could you have built these profiles inside of Revit? Or absolutely. But in this particular scenario, they were built inside of Rhinoceros. Now, could those curves have been built inside of Grasshopper? Absolutely. But I'm just kind of showing in this scenario, in this particular kind of workflow, concept is that these were built inside of Rhinoceros. So what's happening here is you're opening up Revit, you're opening up Rhinoceros, you're opening up this particular file, you're then opening up Grasshopper inside Revit, you are then selecting these elements,
Mm-hmm.
and then you are then converting it to Grasshopper geometry, and then you are building the profile
Mm-hmm.
inside of Revit. So this particular element, see here,
Yep.
is an actual Revit API element that's building the form. Okay. Yeah. So kind of a lot in there, but it's simple just to kind of teach the concept
Yeah,
of it.
but
So
what I wanted to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I wanted to just, again, I'm learning this probably at the same time as a lot of people watching it, so I think I'm
yeah,
assuming maybe they're thinking the same things. Um,
yes,
what would one of the a big advantage here, in my opinion, is that as much as the you can build geometry in Dynamo, you're using nodes to build the geometry. You can't flip out to the geometry mode and then just sketch lines and loft things and build, right? Whereas by utilizing Rhino and then Grasshopper sits on top of it, you have a 3D modeling program, right? I mean, you have a that has lofting and massing, and you can physically draw geometry as if you were inside of Rhino, but then you're using Grasshopper on top. So it's almost like the what you're missing inside of Dynamo, for example, in the 3D geometry creation piece of it, you actually have an editor now inside of this environment, which is pretty cool in my opinion, right? You can draw some crazy lofted shape, and then you can utilize it inside of Revit as well as inside of Rhino as well as with Grasshopper connecting to it, which I think is pretty powerful in my opinion.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean that. In fact, that's just one particular scenario out of like hundreds. But yes,
Right.
that is correct. You what the what McNeil, the creators of Rhinoceros, said is, well, why don't we why don't we just give all the capability of Rhinoceros, all of its geometry kernel, all of its modeling capability to the Revit users?
Right.
That way, if they're more comfortable modeling inside of Rhinoceros,
Mm-hmm.
then they have the ability to do that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then they could use Grasshopper as kind of the conduit to then get this rebuilt inside of Revit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So absolutely, that is one scenario. Yes.
Cool.
Yes. So I'm glad you can kind of see that. But as you start to see this, the wheels start to turn. You're like, well, could I? Okay. So that's we'll do a demo to kind of have hopefully answer a lot of people's questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you this just real quick, and then we'll do some live demos with some questions. So the one on the right actually gets and sets parameters, kind of the classic Dynamo way of getting parameters and setting parameters.
Mm-hmm.
Using yeah. So the one on the left does the exact same thing. So it has the ability to get and set parameters. So Grasshopper inside Revit also has get and set nodes.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of work a little differently, but you ultimately could end up with the same answer. Now, the question is, why would you ever do something that's equivalent to Dynamo if you already have Dynamo? Well, this is just a concept. Maybe what's wired in before this in order to get all that data, to get all that information. Maybe that information is coming from Grasshopper. Maybe that information is coming from Rhinoceros. Maybe all the force labs, for example, that set all the elevations are all coming from a Rhinoceros file that was built right inside of Rhinoceros, and then you're pulling elevations, and then you're bringing that in, and you're allowing that to control the top or the bottoms of the columns or the bottoms of the wall. So
Mm-hmm.
so you could just see, like, take a snapshot of this, then you can imagine, okay, what else could this connect to, and how powerful could that be once that's done? Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, cool.
Very cool.
Okay, so yeah, so let me just show you a lot of hand waving here, but let me show you. So in concept, maybe we could get some input. In concept, is this something that is kind of desirable? I thought about this. I kind of brought it up to a USC professor. I kind of brought it up to a few people, and the emotions are very mixed on this idea. But I kind of like it, just the equivalence.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm all for input, because what you see on the left is still kind of in its infancy.
Yeah, I personally think it's going to be great. I think those of you out there watching it live right now, and I guess in the future too, comment or chat and let Marcello know what you think about the comparison. I think it's great because, for example, myself, who's very familiar with Dynamo and Revit, not familiar with Grasshopper and Rhino, to see those two next to each other, it connects the dots for me, which is great. And then vice versa,
Okay.
I guess if you're a Rhino Grasshopper user, then maybe this connects the dots. And the other piece that I think this is helping with it, just which is probably why they decided to spend the effort and time to develop this, is in my opinion, in the past, receiving a Rhino model was pretty useless in Revit for the most part, right? It's just there
Mhm.
wasn't so much you can do with it, right? And so here, by connecting the dots and using Grasshopper and pulling information from that Rhino model and then creating stuff inside of Revit for it, like you mentioned with floor plates and stuff, that to me,
Yeah.
I could see being extremely valuable too. Where even if we're at conceptual level or something, a lot of people commented and said that they a lot of times they're using Rhino very early on for massing studies to do shadow and sun studies. The typical Rhino Grasshopper sort of computational design thing. And to your point, if you can take those volumes and extract even like outlines of floor plates from those and then draw Revit floors with them, instead of, I mean, that right there is pretty cool, right? I mean, that adds value to the process immediately.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it absolutely does. And there's going to be a few examples in the book where you kind of pull out equivalent geometry from rhinoceros, and then using that geometry like an outline of a floor or whatever to
Mm-hmm.
rebuild your floor
Right.
inside of Revit, or using that edge to guide a wall location. Maybe we'll do one of those examples. But
Mm-hmm.
but I just want to make sure I emphasize that this is kind of way above and beyond the idea of just interoperability. Because when I think of the term interoperability, what I think is I have a lot of geometry in Rhinoceros, and I need to get all that geometry
Mm-hmm.
into Revit.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of that kind of blanket idea is not really going to capture all the potential for this new technology. I guess that's what I'm saying. So,
Right. Right.
so just the way it works is, can you see my screen? The way it
Yep.
works is,
Yep.
yeah. So basically, right now, Rhinoceros, what they call Rhinoceros Inside Revit, is still in beta. It's in this WIP, work in
Mm-hmm.
progress format. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have Rhinoceros version 6, you can get the beta for free, and then it just comes with a Rhinoceros Inside Revit add-in, and then it's basically on with add-ins. You kind of fire it up here, and then it'll give you some tabs here. Uh, it'll add a new tab here whenever it adds it. Yeah, there it is. Okay, and then basically it'll give you the ability to open up Rhinoceros here. We can do that. And then basically this is now what we call rhino. My mouse just keeps chunking along. This is Rhinoceros inside of Revit. So if I were to close Revit, then this version of Rhinoceros would close.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I click Grasshopper, that would be Grasshopper inside Revit. But I like kind of what you talked about, and we could kind of think about that. Like if we're inside of Grasshopper, maybe we build a box or something like this, and then maybe we got that's some type of geometry, and then
Mm-hmm.
of course it would probably be more complicated than this, right?
Right.
Maybe we build like this is geometry, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got kind of geometries,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have the ability to actually extract these edges and use them,
Mm-hmm.
or we could, if we wanted to, maybe. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing stuff out here. Maybe we're just drawing some lines that kind of represent some kind of canopy that may be between here. I know the structural engineers out there would probably kill me, but anyway, you get the kind of the idea, right? So this may be just in concept something, right?
Yep. Yep.
So this actually, what I think about with interoperability is this whole thing goes into Revit, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's not what you want. Maybe all you want to do in concept is just kind of think about these structural beams here
Mm-hmm.
as center lines, and then maybe bring these center lines into Revit and
Mm-hmm.
then rebuild things on top of them. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just go through that kind of concept,
Sure.
if we have a little bit of time. So
Yeah.
what we're gonna do is let's just take either one or two of these or whatever, and then we'll bring the lines into Grasshopper, and then we'll use the Grasshopper inside Revit nodes to build structural beams in Revit at these locations. Let's see how that shakes out. So we got Revit open, we've got Rhinoceros inside Revit open, and then we hit Grasshopper here, and that will open up Grasshopper inside Revit. You can open it up there, or if you wanted to, if we were inside of uh, Revit itself, we could open up Grasshopper
Mm-hmm.
here as well. They have here on the right Grasshopper Player, which is awesome. So you can run scripts
Cool.
just using, yeah. So in this particular case, this is probably what most of the most of the Rhinoceros users are used to is Grasshopper. The environment is a visual programming environment, so it has boxes and wires, a lot like Dynamo. I'm not in the position to compare the two, but that's in concept what it does. Uh, Unlike Dynamo, Grasshopper does not have its own background preview, so it
Mm.
uses Rhinoceros as the background preview.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we don't see anything 3D here. So Grasshopper is 2D, where you just see kind of like in canvas mode. Yeah. So if we wanted to actually select elements, so okay, ultimately what we want to do in Grasshopper for Revit, we have this new tab called Revit here. Okay, and under here there's a lot of new functionality, and one of them is called under Build. One of them is called Build Beam, and it's just like this.
Mm-hmm.
So this will actually build a Revit beam. You
Nice.
add in a curve, you just tell it a type, and you give it a level. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of in concept how it works. So if you look at it, Grasshopper is a bit more flexible in terms of input. So you could wire stuff in here, or you can just kind of do a right click and you could actually set you
Mm.
can actually set some of this stuff. So on the type, you could actually come in here and then filter out structural framing, and then you could actually pick out a structural framing type if you wanted to, or you could use the old tried and true wire type and then
Mm-hmm.
actually feed in the wire. So yeah, so I suppose we can probably get a big beam there here. So we could do it this way if we wanted to. Yeah. Or yeah, so there's kind of a lot of
Hmm.
ways you can do it. You can set it so that's kind of one way you can do it, or you can wire it in if you want it to be not so quote unquote hard coded. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's just kind of focus on the curve. So what we're going to do is we basically need to take the curve that is in Rhinoceros and bring it and convert it to Grasshopper geometry. Kind of similar how we would select something out of Revit and convert it to Dynamo geometry.
Mm-hmm.
Grasshopper geometry and Dynamo geometry are, I mean, Grasshopper geometry and Rhinoceros geometry are technically two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so one way to select it is you can come here and you can select by curve here. So here you go. So under params, you go by curve. And then this will, if you right click here and you say set one curve, you can actually pick a curve there. Or if you want, you can actually go back to Rhinoceros. You can select a bunch of curves. And then if you went back to Grasshopper, you can right click here and say set multiple curves, and it'll set multiple curves. Kind of like a watch node, there's something called parameter here. I'm trying to be sensitive to all the Rhinoceros and Dynamo,
Yeah. Yeah.
Rhinoceros and yeah, Grasshopper users. But anyway, so here you go. So you can see this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it basically this is all the information that's coming um, out of Rhinoceros to Grasshopper. Okay,
Nice.
so you can actually feed this right in. Boom. And then it looks like we need to set a level probably. Oh, slightly off axis. So I guess that's okay. If it's slightly off
Shocker.
axis.
Shocker.
Okay. So I have it in this template. There it is. So it's there. There's the framing right there. Look at that.
Nice.
Yeah. So here's all the framing that is now created. That is controlled now by Grasshopper inside Revit. Now, one of the cool thing I think is that if we can think about it this way too, you have this now framing inside of Revit. You know, you can kind of think about all the workflows that would go along with that. But also, you can kind of consider this if in fact, see, it's actually doing a preview there.
Yep.
You can turn off the preview if you like. But one thing too is if in fact you wanted to actually show these beams inside of Rhinoceros and actually model them before you had Grasshopper inside Revit, you'd have to actually put profiles on these beams and loft them
Right.
across.
Mm-hmm.
Now what you can do, because you can actually send geometry back and forth, is you can actually build your geometry inside of Revit, which would be these beams,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could you can move them back over. So the way that would work is under parameters. So now instead of selecting out of Rhinoceros, you're selecting out of Revit. So under here you can say a graphical element, and then you can actually select here, set multiple graphical elements. You can actually window these. We'll hit the little finish button, and then it'll now bring all of this. It'll bring the elements into the wrapped elements into Grasshopper, and then you convert them from Revit geometry to Grasshopper geometry. And in order to do that, you go under Revit, under Elements, and then you say Element Geometry, very similar to the Element Geometry node that's in Dynamo.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of kick it over. You got to change your detail level here to medium, and then now you actually have the geometry inside of Grasshopper, which is previewed there. Then you could just hit Bake. Now that means that you're actually converting Grasshopper geometry to Rhinoceros geometry.
Mm-hmm.
You can bake it in, yeah. And then now you actually have your structural framing. It's there somewhere. I just got to turn off this. You have that framing now actually inside of Rhinoceros, and it was all built using Revit. So I can think of other workflows here, like maybe you're doing something in concept, but you like the way Revit builds stairs or ramps or something. You actually build all that and then kick it over to Rhinoceros and then kind of see it in concept if you wanted to. Or maybe you like to model your stairs in Rhinoceros. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, there are ideas to kind of go back and forth with elements, but it's not. And again, like I said, it's not just all about interoperability. It's about kind of connecting the databases and kind of using a lot of this to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
I know that was a lot.
No. I think I probably speak for everyone out there right now already that their minds are blown. And I think when you demo something like this, and most of us out there, and you yourself included, I'm sure, automatically start thinking of all the possibilities that you could use this, right? I mean, that's where my mind goes, and so that's really, really cool. I was immediately thinking the ability to bring Rhino geometry into Revit and utilize it, but to your point, going back and forth could also be valuable, right? There are things that Rhino does better than Revit, and there are things that Revit may do better than Rhino, and so to be able to connect those two databases and utilize each software's positives, so to speak, is huge, right? That could be a game changer.
Yeah, certainly. And certainly. And this is dynamic. If we were to actually move and reshape these center lines that were originally driving the geometry in Revit, then Revit would change as well, because this is all kind of dynamically linked. And these are, sorry, it's a little out of something.
It's all good.
Okay. And these are dynamic handshakes, which are really nice, because before, if you want to talk about interoperability, the way you would do that is with maybe SAT imports, maybe direction, unintelligent blobs, maybe add-ins. The advantage here is that you're getting the full capability of Rhinoceros modeling, their full geometry kernel, Grasshopper's full functionality, and it's made by McNeil, so it's a bit, it's pretty stable in that regard. The problem I've had with add-ins kind of in the past with compatibility is the stability of them, or kind of the
especially early, right? I mean, it usually takes a couple of years for any add-in to Revit to become considered stable.
Yeah, I suppose. And this is still kind of in its infancy, but I wanted to make sure all the listeners kind of see all the value in this and kind of jump on it early. And it's probably a good time, kind of world we live in, to kind of get on board with this pretty early, because you can see that what is not in here in this Revit tab, which I call Grasshopper for Revit, or Grasshopper Inside Revit, is there are 158 functionality in here, but Dynamo for Revit has much more than that out of the box. So this is still kind of in development, and I honestly don't think that that Grasshopper Inside Revit will completely replace Dynamo. I think it will only supplement it to make it a much better a
Right.
much better yeah, a much better workflow. So why wouldn't you kind of look at two workflows? And this kind of goes back to my point. Where's my Did I close it? No, I had my maybe I did. Oh, here, up here. My mouse, I don't know what's going on with my mouse. But yeah, as you think about these concepts, these concepts could be tied to all that geometry or information you're bringing in from Rhinoceros, and then you could use Grasshopper, even though there's an equivalent Dynamo one, because in those scenarios, what you'd have to do is before is you'd have to bring that information in, you'd have to break the link or write it out to Excel and then bring it back in through Dynamo. But now you have kind of a more seamless way
Right.
to link the data together.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm just trying to think of some good reasons why. I'm telling you, I don't know what it is, but when I started teaching these concepts on equivalence,
Mm-hmm.
there was there was some there was some good criticism on why you would ever do that. And I mean, first of all, why not? I mean, that's the
Well,
way I think
right. I
about
mean, that's
it.
yeah, right. Because
Right?
you can,
Why
right?
would you never model an elephant in Revit? Right? Why would you? Well, why not? Right?
Right
But
not exactly.
I'm just trying to think of some other ways you could justify this.
We have had some questions coming in, and so one of the questions which I think we started alluding to just before this little discussion was, do you see this as a workflow for keeping a Rhino model and a Revit model coordinated? And so I think we kind of answered that, but I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit. And I think the idea of the SAT and what you were just talking about, having to export and import Excel to take data and that link, I think kind of answers that a little bit. But maybe if you want to expand a little bit on your thoughts on that question.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll back up before I answer it on
Mm-hmm.
that question. And the concept that I think we're kind of trying to get at is it all comes down to workflow and kind of what you want to do. If in this scenario you only ever wanted to in concept lay out those structural beams so that you could kind of see how they looked, um, but then that was the only reason, and then you closed Rhinoceros and you never used it again. You were just kind of doing a preliminary study, or to the very extreme end of it, which is you actually have Rhinoceros users setting up all of the work lines for your, say, your canopies, all of the edges of your walls for your buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And in that situation, then you would be dynamically linked all the time with Revit, even as Revit went into production. And then as Rhinoceros changed and the building may have shifted or something,
Right.
then all of the things in Revit would dynamically change. That's kind of like the two extremes of this. So,
Right.
so what I'm saying is you can work anywhere in between there. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm not going to say where you would work. I think these are good water cooler conversations. Like, hey, maybe these are in flux. So these we only in concept look at, but these are locked down hard. So these would be good geometry to carry on and have both models dynamically linked at all times. But because what I'm trying to get the concept and what I'm trying to do is I want, including myself, the entire industry to get away from the idea that interoperability, that term in a very kind of macro sense, means everything in Rhinoceros goes everything into Revit. And I'm
Right.
thinking you could just pick and choose of what you want to kind of move and control, depending on the workflow in your office.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then how you control it as you move along. And then in the other sense, maybe some portions are controlled by Rhinoceros,
Mm-hmm.
but then other portions are controlled by Revit.
Mm-hmm.
And which ones are those? Who's assigned to those? So like you can see how kind of how complicated it could get, or
Mm-hmm.
how simple it could get. So you have all that ability to do all that. And I haven't even gone into kind of the annotation side of it. But anyway, does that help answer that question? So
I
do you need to? So I guess the original question, we come back to it. Would this be a need to actually make two models, a Rhinoceros model and a Revit model, kind of compatible throughout the lifetime of the project? And I'm going to say that would be entirely up to what workflow you want to use.
right. Right.
Yeah.
But you mentioned some good points, right? The idea of I mean, if you model something in Revit that requires a conceptual mass to create because it's a crazy funky form and the only way to build Revit geometry from it is utilizing this conceptual mass, right? and then throughout the life of the project, if that becomes reality, that mass needs to stay there, right? Because that controls the geometry. But to your
Yes.
point, right, the person who's maybe the person who designed this piece is using Rhino, and you could actually, if it's built correctly and these things are set up right, the reality is that Rhino model can live with the life of the project, and you only need to pull what you need from it. Maybe, like you said, maybe it's just the edges to create the beams, which are then going to apply the glazing to or whatever, right? And I mean, the other piece too is, a lot of times I've seen in the past are things like, sculptural objects within a building. So maybe it's like a rock climbing wall or like a museum exhibit or something, right? Those are things that maybe they're using Rhino or a type of program like that, and instead of just being this mass that you somehow, and this is that idea of interoperability, right? Immediately it's like, yeah, interoperability is, yeah, I can bring in a SketchUp file, I can bring in a CAD file. It's like, no, just bringing in a file isn't interoperable, right? That's just linking in a file, right? And so you're expanding beyond that, and it's not just this hunk of mass in your model. It can become something that becomes part of your model and lives with your model as it moves on.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, very good. So kind of anywhere in between, right, Jeff?
Right. Yep.
And another thing is, what another comment I've been getting over the last almost year, maybe 8 months, is that, well, now we have the ability to model inside of Rhino because we never could have modeled this inside of Revit. Now, I'm not promoting that concept in any way because if you look in this example, what I did here was to kind of kick off this whole technology is I thought it'd be fun to actually model a rhinoceros inside of Revit. Forget Rhino Inside technology. Pretend it never existed.
Right.
I modeled this southern white rhino inside of Revit. And so I'm not in any way advocating that Revit can't do complex modeling. I'm just saying if you're more comfortable modeling inside of rhinoceros instead of Revit, then you have a lot more opportunity to utilize the rhinoceros geometry. And so just another little bit. So if you can, and then we talked about like conversion and complex surfaces. We took those structural beams, modeled them, and then baked them into rhinoceros. You can actually do the same thing with complex shapes. So in this example, I took the Rhino in Revit. McNeil people got a big kick out of this too.
Of course.
This is a rhinoceros model inside of Revit. If you want to, you can actually then bring that into Rhino. So this is actually how it converted. It looks really good. So this is the Revit Rhino inside of Rhino. Bang, bang, bang.
Of course, right. I love how all the software you use ends up with animal names anyway, so it works out for you, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's true. You know what? I don't know why that is. Maybe I should mention this before I forget. If anyone ever wants any of my Revit families, I just partnered with Unify, and through their subscription service, you can get all of my families. And if you're not a Unify user, a customer, you can get a demo version, and then you can just download it before your trial ends. Yeah. So if anyone wants this, or you could get the book, and then all of these goodies will be inside the book as well.
Awesome.
I'm still trying to figure out the equivalents for this one. Anyway, I think that'll be a good challenge for me. Maybe we'll work it out in the YouTube channel. And all the listeners, when this book comes out, you'll be like, yeah, I was there when.
I remember that. Awesome. No, that's great. I think that's pretty cool. So I think maybe since we do have some time, I'm checking to see if there's any questions that we want to bring up. Maybe just because you mentioned it, a quick touch on that idea you just mentioned of annotations and how this, because I think immediately with Rhino, and I do the same thing, you think about complex geometry, and it's a great three-dimensional geometric or forming tool, right? I mean, that's what it's known for, is creating complex geometries easily. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are and what you're thinking when you said annotations and how.
Okay, on annotation, I guess there's a few ways I kind of see annotation. When I say annotation, I kind of mean generic. I mean things that don't involve 2D or 3D elements. I think that's what I'm kind of focusing on when I say that. So there's a wide range of that. So if we kind of go back to the equivalents of the Dynamo manual, I'm thinking of things like So I'm thinking of things like being able to set text, being able to globally take parameters and change them that aren't related to geometry in any way.
Mm-hmm.
being able to get and set like string values
Mm-hmm.
in text, and then all the way to maybe more annotation. Okay, I guess this one is still kind of getting set in parameters,
Mm-hmm.
but then the idea of like text strings. I mean, sorry, dimension strings, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have examples in the book for that, but anyway, when you kind of think about that, all of that is available to you through the Grasshopper
Mm-hmm.
Inside Revit
Right.
tab. So the most powerful ones I can think of is getting and setting.
Mm-hmm.
Although although there are some annotation out of the box functionality right now,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but there's more kind of coming online. What is exciting though about this is that is basically the ability to customize Grasshopper. Now, one thing I'm very excited about, and I've already actually started to kind of play with it,
Mm-hmm.
is Grasshopper is very flexible in terms of adding additional components,
Mm-hmm.
um, as well as being able to add your own custom nodes. Uh, and so, uh, and so, if for example you wanted to actually have a dimension string or something, and it wasn't already in Revit, Grasshopper inside Revit out of the box, you would have the ability to tap the Revit API and be able to kind of code your own node as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and to do that, yeah, I know it's a bit more advanced, but I do plan to tackle those all those concepts because if we as we talk about equivalence, what's going to happen when I go through the book is there may not be a way to do something that is already like out of the box for Dynamo.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'll need to do is actually make a node that I code in Grasshopper for Revit that'll do the equivalence. But also in the book, in the Dynamo book, there's an advanced section, or what we call, I guess, the expert section.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the vector stuff that actually goes through. Yeah, there's the cow. It goes through. Gotta have them.
Of course.
Is there's a whole custom node section
Mm-hmm.
on how to create your own Dynamo custom nodes. There'll be equivalent ways on how do you create your own custom Grasshopper for Revit nodes, like think whatever that may be. They doesn't quite work. It's going to be C# based, but it doesn't quite work in the same format as what we call zero touch for Dynamo. But
Mm-hmm.
it does have very similar things in terms of kind of the core functionality, kind of
Mm-hmm.
what makes an input port, what makes an output port, how you define your kind of core functionality. So I'll be also having that as the equivalence too. If you're a coder, you can kind of see, okay, this is how to make a custom node in Dynamo, and this is how to make the equivalent custom node in Grasshopper inside Revit. So I know it's kind of a long answer, but
No, no. I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful because I mean, it answered for me. It answered a couple things, and maybe there's some folks out there thinking the same. And so, when it comes to the things like the annotations that you mentioned, um, what I immediately thought of is what you're doing is you're actually accessing the Revit database, right? And so that's
yes,
you immediately think of geometry and all the stuff with geometry. But to your point, similar to Dynamo, you're accessing Revit's database, and so there's a lot of information there, obviously, that you can utilize for certain things. And then my question was going to be the same thing. Was you said there's only 158 nodes to start, and I was curious as to what method Grasshopper had to develop custom nodes, but you just showed us. So it's C sharp.
yeah.
It's C sharp, but it's talking to the Revit API. So in theory, if it is available on the API, you can create it, or we don't know that yet.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, definitely answering your own question there. Uh, yes, that is. I'm not promoting any particular language. When I
Right.
do the equivalent, it will be in C sharp. You can
Yeah.
use C sharp or you can use Python. Actually, I'm sure all the Grasshopper experts. There are others.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just because I have, here's my boy. Just because you have the equivalent, I have an equivalence in zero touch slash C sharp. Then I'm going to do it in Grasshopper for Revit. I will do it
Mm-hmm.
uh, as C sharp. And then I basically showed kind of a custom node sitting on the canvas there, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not really the only way you can do it. You can actually do it where you create your own custom package that actually sits up here on the ribbon and so on. Like so, I'm actually making an equivalent
Mm-hmm.
package simplex that's in Dynamo. I'm making the equivalent one,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then and then so I've already started to kind of work on that. Actually, this one creates a moose. Um, and what's nice about the grasshopper and rhinoceros geometry kernel is it's very fast and snappy,
Mm.
and there's a lot of time that could be saved with generating geometry inside of Grasshopper and inside of Rhinoceros. Yeah. So this, let me
Right.
see if I can show you this. Yeah. So I think so. Then actually, see where would we see this? We'd see this inside of Rhinoceros, but it's probably pretty small. I think I made those buildings pretty big. But anyway, you drop that down. Oh, there it is. See it?
Yep. Yep. There we
There- I had to. I guess I had to show something. Kind of there it is. Yeah. So if you want, yeah. So I'm kind of working on the equivalent simplex
Mm-hmm.
package. Simplex package actually touches a bunch of databases. It touches like etabs. I think Jeff, you were in that presentation I did on no RAM structure, right?
Yep.
So it's going to have to do all that. So anyway, there's a lot of functionality and flexibility you can have with Grasshopper. Now, I'm not saying that Dynamo doesn't have that flexibility, but if you're more comfortable using Grasshopper, then you have that ability. And then the answer to the last part is yes. Grasshopper inside Revit is tapping the Revit database. So
Mm.
if you don't have any of the ability to code it, then you'll be able to and it's available in the API. Then you have the ability to make a custom node for it. One more thing: this whole project is open source. So if you wanted to see how these custom nodes were created in the tab, you could actually physically go to the GitHub repo.
Mm-hmm.
You just Rhino Inside Revit GitHub repo, and it will show you actually how each one of these are coded. And if you wanted to take those and then kind of piggyback on them or modify them or however, then you have the ability to do that too.
Awesome. Sweet.
Yeah.
So Aussie BIM Guru, thanks for joining, man. He said that you can actually
Ooh, Ginger was here.
yeah,
Nice.
you can write with Python also in Grasshopper. So I
Yes,
guess
Python, you could, and it's right in your face because they there's actually one of the nodes on getting started is there's actually a Python node sitting
yeah,
right there, right
yeah.
in your face. So, yeah, Python. There are others.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you pick your flavor,
Mm-hmm.
and then rock and roll. What I like too about this um, is that the McNeil developers decided to try to get access to this technology, even if you're not familiar with the technology. And what I mean by that is the Revit users. So, for example, there's different layers of users. So if you're a very big power Rhinoceros and Grasshopper user, then you'd be opening up Rhinoceros and Grasshopper all the time and working in them. If you were
Right.
building scripts for everybody, yet your Revit user is not a Rhinoceros user, but they need to run a Grasshopper script. In the past, what you had to do is you had to open Rhinoceros and then you had to open up Grasshopper.
Mm.
Well, the main thing about this new technology is that you actually don't need to open up Rhinoceros anymore to get to Grasshopper. If you open up Grasshopper, it doesn't need to open up Rhinoceros. So you
Hmm.
wouldn't have to have, yeah. And then to even give further access is you wouldn't even happen to open up Rhinoceros or Grasshopper if you wanted to run a script, because then you could just run off player, which kind of works similar to uh, uh, Dynamo Player.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, yeah, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
similar.
No, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Nice.
yeah, yeah. No, there's a lot. But yeah, it's exciting. Hey, there's my doggy who just came in. And then also, if you want, there's some previews. The Grasshopper geometry will preview inside of Revit if you want it to. You have the ability to turn that off,
Mm-hmm.
but just because it doesn't have its own background preview, just because
Awesome.
it doesn't have its own background preview, you kind of have the ability to do that.
Cool. All right, let me just check in a couple questions here.
Okay.
Looks like we answered most folks' questions. While we have a few minutes, actually, yeah, a few minutes. Why not? One of the interesting questions Christian had. Thanks for joining, Christian. Is he's saying how most Rhino models are more on the sketchy conceptual side of things, which means they're not very, I'll use in quotes, accurate. And Revit doesn't like things that aren't coplanar or like we just saw with the line is slightly off axis. Is there have you what have you seen with how Revit interacts with the geometry that you're utilizing? If, like, for example, making something like the RAM or something and bringing it in, and vice versa, are there best practices or something that you've seen? There's a because
Yeah,
I'm just seeing Revit explode depending on how you bring some things in, right? In my mind,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay. So I have kind of a few comments on that. Maybe we'll bake in the moose, and then we'll kind of talk about that, because that would kind of be an extreme case.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have to go old school. My mouse quit on me. It's crazy. I'm slightly bothered by
Time
that.
for a new mouse.
Yeah, I guess so. But gosh, I haven't. I have to use this mouse pad. It's crazy. Oh, gosh, I don't even think I've ever used those things here. Okay, but I'm doing it old school style.
There you go.
Okay, so here's the moose. This is um
Nice.
okay. So let's say this was built inside of Rhinoceros and you wanted to bring it inside of Revit, but it didn't look this clean. There were surfaces that were kind of tessellated,
Mm-hmm.
and edges that didn't quite form quite right. And you were like, well, I can't wrap a facade on this because it's not so clean. Well,
Right.
here's what I have to say about this. And I've gotten this a few questions, is a lot, not a lot of you, but I've gotten the comment that I don't trust Rhinoceros models coming into my office because they're just a bunch of garbage, so I won't use it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I get it from someone within the office, it's a bunch of garbage and I won't use it. Well, first of all, the Rhinoceros Inside Revit technology will not solve that problem for you. So,
Right.
if you know the source of this particular model, particularly if they're in the office,
Right.
then you've got to stand up. Well, unless you're virtual, but let's just say when you're in the office, you got to stand up, or you got to send an email to the person who's building this and say, listen, you need to make sure that this is clean enough so that I could work with it inside of Revit. So that's kind of the first thing. Now, in terms of guidelines for how this would be, I basically would say this: as long as you're not bumping into the kind of the Revit limits. And then what I mean by Revit limits is if you're building a bunch of keyholes and doorknobs and small intricate things inside of Rhinoceros, well, you shouldn't expect that geometry to automatically convert into Revit, because Revit was not intended to build like little keyholes and intricate lace carvings on side of doorknobs. Yeah, you
Right.
just kind of run into the Revit small limit. Now
Mm-hmm.
that it is what it is, you can kind of argue, well, maybe that there's no place for that in AEC, or maybe there should be, whatever.
Right.
But just think about what limits you have inside of Revit, and then think about what's happening with this technology is it's latching on to Revit as an add-in. So it can't physically modify Revit to match things that are possible in Rhinoceros that are
Mm-hmm.
not possible inside of Revit.
Right.
So, for example, in this particular scenario, when I built this moose inside of Grasshopper and then inside of Rhinoceros, there's a lot of intricate kind of I don't know, muscles around the face
Mm-hmm.
that are very small and undulating. If I were to try to bring this into Revit, some of those little undulations wouldn't come through because they're kind of too tight within the tolerances. So if I
Right.
were to take this moose and expand it and make it bigger to,
Mm-hmm.
like, say, a building size, and then bring it in, then I wouldn't have any trouble, because now I'm not reaching the limit of
Right.
kind of the Revit small
Mm-hmm.
factor. But I'm just bringing up the Revit small factor as just one limitation. Not, I wouldn't even call it a limitation. One thing that Revit does, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that you gotta be aware of. So what you need to do if you're gonna latch onto this technology, make sure either you or someone you know is a good Revit user, so that they understand Revit's potential. Because if you don't have that, this is an add-in to Revit. It's not Revit's not an add-in to Rhinoceros. So ultimately, Revit is what you kind of need to make sure you're conscious of its database and how it's working, and when you're kind of transferring information back and forth. Does that help? That's kind of my general answer.
Yeah. No, I think that was great. I think that was an awesome response. I think it brings up to your other discussion about interoperability and what it really means, right? And I
Right. What
think
does it really?
yeah.
What does it really mean? Did you build? Yeah, you
Yeah.
built all this intricate lacing. I mean,
Right.
whatever it is, right? I want this inside of Revit. Well, I can't get in Revit. Okay. Well, what are you really trying to do?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
We have to have kind of those conversations. And quite honest, Jeff, you'd be surprised. A few people have actually told me, listen, why can't this technology do this? Well, this technology is not going to fundamentally change
Mm-hmm.
the way Revit works. That's not how this technology is. It's an add-in to Revit. You don't change.
Yep.
When you put an add into a software, you don't fundamentally change the software that it's in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you
Awesome.
want to do that, call up Autodesk and then ask them nicely to make those changes.
I believe there's a suggestion line now that you can just put suggestions on, and that's how they.
Yeah, no, I mean, believe me, it's all good. And you can imagine as more and more comments come in and more suggestions come in that are rhinoceros related for functionality and making your lives easier. I'm sure Autodesk actually listens in on that stuff because they're pain points for everyone. They want their customers to save time and money. And when
Mm-hmm.
I've talked with Autodesk and the Revit developers about this Rhinoceros Inside Revit technology, the answer was all the same, which is, well, we opened our Revit API, and
Right.
so this is kind of one of the extreme uses of opening the API.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of have at it, and ultimately, it's kind of solving some of the issues you've had in the industry. So I mean, why not? You ultimately still need a Revit license in order to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. 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 And a Rhino license, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. All right. Well, we.
Okay. Whew.
How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I could go on. I can
I,
go on
I
all day for this. But yeah, I know this is just kind of a taste. Um, Again, everyone, Jeff, you can send a link. I'm going to be going in great detail on my YouTube channel,
mhm.
kind of one equivalence, and we can
Awesome.
have a lot of academic discussions there as well.
Yeah. So what I'll do is in the YouTube
I'm going to leave the
description.
image of the moose up.
They, I'll leave all the links in the blog post that goes live tomorrow, and in the description of the video. I've also been linking some of the stuff you mentioned in the chat. One thing I will mention, which is kind of funny, is you were talking about your mouse kicking the bed, and I was extremely excited, and this is for everyone out there to learn that.
Sorry, Jeff, say that again. Are you extremely excited about what?
The about the mouse, the fact that you were looking, or your mouse may be crap in the bed.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So the Logitech just brought back a mouse that they discontinued called the MX518. And so
Okay.
I already ordered one, but if anyone's in the market for a new mouse, if you aren't familiar with the MX518, it's wired only. It's a gaming mouse from like 15 years ago, but it is
Okay.
by far one of the most comfortable mice that you'll ever use. So if
You know
you're
what,
if
Jeff? I don't really like the wireless mice, so this would be great
there
for
you
you.
go.
It's
There you go. So it's the MX518, and I promise everyone out there you will not regret it one bit.
okay.
And they actually brought it back. They discontinued it quite a while ago. So
Well, maybe a lot of people are gaming now because they're home.
maybe, right? Awesome. Well, Marcello, thank you so much for joining us. I think that's probably where we'll wrap up. That was a good. I think that was a ton of awesome content. I'm gonna link everything down below in the comments.
Let me unshare here.
Yeah, let's see you again. Let's see you big on screen again.
Give me a second.
Everyone wants to remember your face before we sign off.
Okay.
And everyone else who's out there, thank you for joining us. And thanks for waiting a couple minutes for us to start these things up. I guess YouTube's back in action. Go figure. So Marcello, you can be found at simplycomplex.org or on Twitter at Marcello Sgambelluri, I believe, right? Is it your full last name for your Twitter handle?
Marcello SGAMB. Yeah.
SGAMB,
Yeah.
perfect.
Or you can find me on LinkedIn, or just Google my name. You'll probably see some of the.
Google the Revit cow and you'll find
I suppose, just like if you Google the Revit kid,
exactly.
you'll find Jack. Right?
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, man. This was awesome. We'll have to do it again. I'm sure
Thanks for having
we'll
me.
always find some cool crap to talk about. There's always something going on, right?
Oh,
If you guys are interested in enjoying these happy hours, let me know, and definitely subscribe to the channel because I usually post when the next one is there. And yeah, I think with that, we'll probably wrap it up. Marcelo, anything else you want to say before we say goodnight and bid you adieu?
no, thank you, everyone. Jeff, thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We've got a lot of more awesome stuff coming up.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So thank you so much, and everyone have a wonderful night and be safe. And
Stay safe.
yeah, definitely. Alrighty, well, with that, we'll talk to everyone later. Bye bye.